So CIS, it turns out, it had received money from DHS that year, but also it had a big donation from the Democracy Fund, which is Omidyar. And this is where you start getting into, the kind of the weeds of what the problem is with this anti-disinformation world. If you start mixing in private money and with these various structures that are doing things like flagging items for, for content moderation or de-amplification, and it turns out that those donors have political sympathies in one direction or another, then what are we talking about here? I mean, we're talking about kind of it's a new form of information control. Once upon a time, there was a reason why the candidate that raised the most money almost always won. On the one hand, it had to do with the fact that the candidate got more exposure, but there was also this sort of secondary factor, which is that local news stations didn't want to upset their best advertisers. So they shaded coverage a certain way when they covered campaigns. Like they tended to be harsher in the direction of, a Bernie Sanders or Dennis Kucinich or Ron Paul, because they're just not going to get as much money from those folks. So what happens when there's more money flowing into this anti-disinformation complex from one set of political actors than from another? That's pretty worrying, I think. You add to this something that has a controversial bent, like the Trump case, where they can find pretexts for banning people or for dialing them down, right? I mean, with J6, they use these tools to get people off the internet, to remove them from the ability to process credit card transactions. This stuff is all next level,
Listen, the private funding of what is essentially informational infrastructure surrounding public events like elections is about as, to me, forbidding and foreboding as could be. We saw in the 2020 election, Mark Zuckerberg basically privately funding a network of ballot drop boxes across the country. Now, we also know that Omidyar funded, to some extent, a content moderation, to be mild about it, or even a censorship machine that operated on behalf of one party. And they did this in conjunction with U.S. government forces, right? I mean, it wasn't just that he donated to the campaign or created some module for the use of the campaign. They interfaced with the actual USG to do this. This looks like the creation of a one-party state in conjunction with corporate power. I don't know how else you describe it. And will it cause America to feel more secure in its sense of our democracy being an honest project? Not at all. It's going to breed cynicism at levels you couldn't even imagine before, because frankly, I couldn't imagine these projects even occurring before.